Today I'm going to talk about what happened 20 years ago. 20 years ago, there was a terrorist attack that happened in the subway trains and the buses in London, England on January 7th. It was like one of the scariest things that happened that time period. I never noticed it happened. The only new thing that I noticed that happened was Hurricane Katrina. Hurricane Katrina was the worst event that happened in our country, in New Orleans and Florida and sometimes Texas or something. I don't remember. I think it was New Orleans. New Orleans got destroyed a lot during Hurricane Katrina. It was like one of the scariest events that happened. Also, the terror bombings in London are pretty scary too. So there are two events that happened in London in the summer of 2005 that was pretty scary. The bus bombings and the hurricane that happened in New Orleans and the terrorist bombings that happened in London. At the time when my mom and I went to London in September and that year, basically I've heard a lot of news reports about the bombings, and I was really scared of that. I have no idea what suicide bombers look like. I thought they looked like the bad guys from Thunderbirds or The Incredibles. You know, like that French guy, Bon Voyage, but I was kind of like a very clueless kid. I had no idea anything about politics. I never noticed it was Islamic terrorism back in that time. I had no idea what Islamic terrorism was. I was like 9 years old back then. I was a little bit too young to notice that stuff. But it was really scary hearing news reports. I like watching the news with my mom, but there's a lot of scary things that happened that year, like the Hurricane Katrina and also the terrorist bombings in London. My mom and I did go to London back in that year. The reason why we went to London is because we were heading towards Paris. Why are we going to Paris? So I can speak the French language. I really don't like the French language that much. The French language is kind of gay. It's also for girls. Kind of disgusting, isn't it? French culture is kind of girly. For a 9-year-old kid, it's not a type of country I want to visit. There's too much girly stuff there. I should have told my mom, can I stay at home instead? If I did stay at home, my mom's afraid I'm going to do nothing. How the hell would she know I'm going to do nothing if I stayed home? In America, if I can't go to Paris and London that time period. The only thing I'm going to do is watching TV shows, because at that time, there's a lot of interesting shows for big kids. Like there's this one channel called PBS Kids Go. They're like high school shows, like bad guy shows that, the bad guys in the Spider-Man computer games. That looks like a type of show the bad guys would watch. That's why I can't watch, because I don't like bad guys. Bad guys are awful people. I'd kick their butts in Spider-Man. I don't want to end up like those guys. I don't want my ass to get kicked by those bad guys in Spider-Man. But I never noticed that most PBS Kids shows are very educational about big kids and friendship and stuff like that, and geography, like Postcards and Buster. I thought it was a bad guy show because of the soundtrack and also the skateboarders. I didn't really understand that show very well. I was more like a Thomas the Tank Engine guy at that time. Thomas the Tank Engine is a very innocent show. There's no rock music, there's no skateboarders. It's just a bunch of trains and vehicles or talk. Not like a bunch of kids who look like criminals in the Spider-Man computer game. So as a matter of fact, it's kind of weird that a girl will be watching the PBS Kids shows even though they look like for boys. There was a show called Maya McGill. That's basically a girl show, but I didn't watch it. It's about Latino kids. It sounds kind of stupid. It was the newest show that came out in 2005. Postcards and Buster came out a year before, but PBS Kids Go is a very young TV blog on PBS Kids at that time. You know, a TV channel for big kids, not for little kids. In case their kids are too old for Sesame Street or Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood or Between the Lions. Instead, there's big kid shows that happen in the afternoon to watch. They look good to watch by myself. If I did stay at home in America instead of going to Paris and London, I can stay home and watch PBS Kid shows all by myself, which I never did. But I then hung out with my dad, but I was watching too many Jurassic Park movies a million times. I was getting kind of tired of those movies. They make my brain kind of stupid. Speaking of which, at that year, there was a movie called King Kong. It's kind of like Jurassic Park, but it's a lot cooler though. It's kind of like watching the Madeline movie with the old-fashioned cars in it. Why am I talking about Madeline? It's like French culture. I'm not into French culture. French culture is for girls, and it's really boring and stupid. PBS Kids is a lot better than French culture, or British culture in my opinion. But during my travels to London back in that year, London has a lot of Hornby train sets there. I wish I had friends in England that time. If I go out by myself as a kid, I would like to meet the local kids, just like in the TV shows and movies. I didn't have the education because I didn't watch any PBS Kids shows like Postcards and Buster. If I didn't watch that show by myself, maybe I'll be educated. If I watched Arthur back when that time, I would have been educated too. Or if I watched these shows as a 7-year-old or 8-year-old, I would have been really educated. Instead I watched Thomas the Tank Engine. That show's not very educational. So anyway, what do you guys think? That was a true story about my trip to London back in 2005 and also Paris too. But I don't want to go to Paris anymore or London anymore because they're kind of girly places. I prefer to stay here in the United States of America. I want to visit the rest of the country. Maybe I'll visit Canada or Mexico or the Caribbean islands someday. At least those are boy places I like to visit, but the problem is they cost too much money. Maybe I'll go to Japan. At least there's a lot of cool trains over there, but I'm not sure Japan might be too expensive to visit. Do you know that British girl who became famous on the internet? She goes to Japan. I wish I can go to Japan too, but my mom says no, I can't travel. I need money for an apartment and all sorts of crap, all sorts of boring stuff. You know, staying in California for 1 year, wouldn't that be kind of boring if you can't travel anywhere? You had to hang out in California for a million years? I'll be bored to death. I want to see the world. I don't want to see California. But at least I get to watch some PBS Kids shows by myself, or PBS shows, as I'm too old for PBS Kids shows. I don't know anything about PBS Kids shows. What do you guys think of PBS Kids shows? Were they educational to you? Well, they are pretty educational, but they look good shows to watch by yourself. I don't think girls deserve to watch them. Girls should watch girl shows. Why can't PBS Kids have girl TV shows? Like gender segregation. That would be a good idea, don't you think? Kind of like how black people and white people back in the old days are segregated. Why can't girls and boys be segregated back in the 2000s era? Girl culture is kind of disgusting for a boy, in my opinion. I wish I had friends with boys back in that time, but I didn't have any education. I don't want friends with boys today because they're ugly and old. They look like monsters. They look like people, they look like ogres and trolls and need their heads chopped up by a giant sword, like you see in medieval stories, because they look like monsters. They look like they want to eat you up. I don't think they want to become friends with. They want to eat you up. They look like monsters. They're scary as hell. But the girls are beautiful. You get to kiss them in the lips and touch their beautiful hair. But boys, stay away from them. They're ugly and old. They're more interesting in kindergarten and elementary school. As they get older, they're kind of ugly and boring and disgusting. I really want to know what British kids were like back in the 2000s era. At that time, the Harry Potter movies are kind of like a big fad. I did like the Harry Potter movies a little bit, but they're more like for girls, but not for boys. I've always thought the Harry Potter movies are kind of boring. At the time when the terrorist bombings happened in London, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire came out in the theaters at that time. I totally forgot about that movie, and I forgot about the third Harry Potter movie. I wasn't really interested in those movies. I thought they were kind of boring. But it's kind of interesting seeing the Muggles, but it's a little bit too boring in my opinion. I think they have nothing to do with England. If it takes place in London, where are the policemen or the cars? They only show you a bunch of old-fashioned crap, but the clothes are modern though. But it says about a kid who tries to escape from the modern world because he just wants to run away from his mean relatives. But I have no idea what the fuck they're saying in Harry Potter because they're talking in such a weird accent. Because I'm American. I don't understand British English. British people are weird. Americans are not weird. We're just normal people. America is a normal country. Do you guys understand? We have good TV shows and movies here, and video games too. What does Britain have? Nothing, of course. But they do have Tom's the Tank Engine, but that's not educational. My mom likes that show, but I kind of like it a little bit, but it's not too educational to me. No wonder why I'm so messed up today.